I'm out. Peace.
We're back to HGC, and we are going to Battlefield of Eternity. Tempo Storm switching it up, picking first pick, and of course, where of all places would Lag Force take us, Dread?
Battlefield, their favorite. And that, suddenly, you've got a team admitting to be momentum-based. They are in the midst of a potential mid-sweep or reverse sweep, and then in Game 5, they find themselves on their favorite battleground. Boy, could not have written a better situation for Lag Force.
It does seem very likely that they could win this series. We started out talking about them wanting to win just games over Tempo Storm, and now they have done what they need to do. Anything else here is icing on the cake. They are over Superstars. They have overtaken Superstars in game victories with these last 2 wins. But honestly, to take out Tempo Storm not only gives them such a great feeling of momentum and their ability to continue on for the rest of this part, knowing that the changes that they have made have been worth it. But they did it with the sub. They did it with Leon Black, ladies and gentlemen. And, man, they would still be able to defeat potentially Even in Death. It would make it very difficult for either Superstars or Even in Death to catch up with them and overtake them and get out of the Crucible range.
And with Tempo Storm coming off, again, a very dominant performance out of last week, it just, every single thing about this that Lag Force has been able to make happen so far today is just, I mean, it's almost unprecedented at this point. It is that big of a setback, you know, unless secretly Zuna is Leon Black.
So I was wondering about that.
Unless that was the old switch, you know, that is the only way.
I did wonder about that. That would be the ultimate troll.
Just to be like, yeah, we're subbing in Leon Black today. But I guess I don't technically know all of the rule sets we set onto the sub there, or haven't looked at the nitty-gritty details, but I feel like somewhere in there would be some kind of verification system to ensure it's not the same dude. Medivh banned for Lag Force. No surprise there, but it left a lot of things. If this is not... See, it's awkward because you want to pick the Tassadar, and I think that Tempo may pick the Tassadar, but if you have to commit to, or at least if you don't do it, it's immediate Task Tracer over, and so it's a forced ban or pick, at least already here for Tempo Storm, into that first slot, and that is another win for Lag Force. It's not a bad pick, it's just anytime you can control and things are calculated, you've got to be considering the advantage given to Lag Force.
We've seen a lot of Battlefield of Eternity games where after there is a... After there's a task pick, the immediate next 2 includes Vala somewhere, but not today. Genji Abathur. Abathur on Battlefield of Eternity does set Lag Force back slightly in the early game, but it worked out for them okay on Towers of Doom. This is even... Towers of Doom is one thing. Battlefield of Eternity is a game you can lose in 8 minutes.
And with that in mind, that makes the Tracer conundrum that much more probable, I feel like, for Tempo Storm. Just because the weakness of the early game of the Abathur pickup, you've already got the Tassadar and all other Tassadar enabling heroes, even though they do well into the Genji or into the Abathur, it's not until post 10. And it's one of those situations where is that worth? Also, Task Tracer on a map like BOE, it stands out even better. I'm honestly surprised to see, after getting bodied in that last game by Task Tracer, going to a map, it's all prepped, and we've made it 51 seconds through this draft and it hasn't been picked. That is very surprising for me.
That's true.
Mainly because the loss immediately before, and it's all the way on through the draft. Uther and Malthael are picked up.
Malthael Tass.
Better on BOE than about every other map you could get that situation because of Malthael's accent to the actual objective. The only map that I would argue he has a direct, advantage over consuming the objective. But you are right, it is something to be considering. And there's the Tracer ban from Lag Force.
Tracer ban, but there's still other opportunities for what that Tassadar can enable. Tempo Storm had enough of Zagara.
It's a huge win in this draft for Lag Force.
Oh, yeah.
A colossal
I don't know if they would have Zag Abathur'd on Battlefield.
At this point, they did it on towers. There's no keep, Skilly, and they were willing to do it. I put a pat. They'd do it anywhere.
There's no keep, Skilly.
And they were still willing to.
It's true. It is true. Next to Leon Black's Warrior, we saw Stitches real Stitches when we came back. Are we going to have Stitches here? Does he go back to Garrosh? Both of their wins that they had were with Stitches.
Yeah, I feel like it's got to be the Stitches. It's just looked better for Leon. His hooks are on point, and, you know, it's a lot easier to, you know, if you mess up a hook, you're kind of like, and you get the wrong target, you're like, oh, that wasn't optimal. If you do that with Garrosh, it's like, oops, I killed my team, as Fury put on a clinic with that on Dragonshire. They go with that, but they also bust out the Karazim for Tomster.
The OG Tomster support.
The OG Tomster support. It's going to be really offensive, very, very synergistic heroes across the board for the members of Lag Force. But we got to wait to see what Tempo wants to pick up here. These last two picks. Who is the primary warrior, and is there going to be anybody enabled by the Tassadar, or is it in fact just a, you know, Vala plus whatever?
Muradin, if they want an escape for Stitches, or versus Stitches, or a Nubarak. We saw that as a counter for Stitches, although it didn't work out for Tempo Storm. And finally, the ranged. Tempo Storm have liked to play Li Ming on Battlefield of Eternity, but it's not as synergistic with the Tassadar as something like a Vala, maybe Greymane.
I like Greymane the most, but I feel like it's going to be a Vala, unless it's a Tyrael. And even then, it's like Tyrael with the Tassadar. It's a little awkward.
Illidan.
Wow. So they still go with the Illidan enabling, or the Tassadar enabled hero by going with the Illidan, and then the Muradin there. 4 melees, and a Tassadar into this comp by Lag Force. I'm really scared for Tempo Storm here. After this draft, it by no means is over, but it just doesn't feel very them, and it does feel like they were constantly trying to figure out what they were going to do once they picked up the Tassadar.
What pick for Lag Force would be the nail in the coffin?
Arthas would be a really good one, but I don't think he's the nail in the coffin. I think the nail in the coffin's Tyrael, but I don't think the synergy between the team would have it. But again, the anti-momentum of moving forward here would be huge. If you've already taken away the Muradin,
you want another warrior?
Yeah, another. Well, Arthas, anything to stop 5 melees. That's all I want.
What about Pandemonium?
I don't know if it's that I necessarily needed a warrior. The biggest thing is anti-melee, right? Pick something anti. It could have been a Brightwing, then it can be the Arthas for the AoE slow. I feel like I'm missing a lot off the top of my head, but those are the ones that are coming to mind right now.
What about a Chen?
Chen doesn't really do that. He does, in fact, that was a little intimidating at first. He does, in fact, interrupt the 1-2 punch and, you know, wombo combos pretty well, especially if they are melee focused, but he doesn't do that well into the melees. There is only 1 interrupt, 2 interrupts, 3 in total if you go into Skullcracker and not even considering the opportunity of Haymaker, but there's quite a few to interrupt the brew, enough to not be afraid, and the Skullcracker specifically is what I'm going to be looking for. So that last Chen pick even seems that there's not even a major argument into it. It does synergize a little bit with their comp, but I don't see any backliner on the side of Tempo Storm that I'm like, oh, there's the Chen Abathur. Like, you know, they're just going to die all day. I
do believe this is the first time we're seeing Chen in North America since his nerfs. Health regen changed from that. He has Purifying Brew now at 7. So we'll see if that's a pick. Generally, that's Brewmaster's Balance anyway. And then Flying Leap, the range of that was reduced. So maybe that's going to dissuade the Flying Kick style build that we see. Really, that was more so mid-season Brawl and Reset. Other than that time period, it seems like for North America, whenever we see Chen, it's still more of Donkey Kong build because it enables a lot of slows. And I would expect that here against a lot of melees, all the melees of Tempo Storm. Let's do it, guys. Game 5 between Lag Force and Tempo Storm. Winner takes it home. Will it be Lag Force with the upset or Tempo Storm getting the win they expected?
And starting with Tempo Storm in the blue, where June will be on the Uther. Malthael played by Fury. Cawthon Luck on the Tassadar. We have Psalm on his Illidan, and Cattle will be the Muradin.
And for Lag Force, in the red, the sub-player Leon Black playing his Stitches yet again. Big Impact playing Genji. Tomster on Karazim. B-Kid playing Chin. And finally, iDream playing Abathur.
Respect the BM there, dude. Just throws down the tempo spray casually.
Who was that?
That was Tomster, I think.
Oh. I was like, if that was Leon Black, I'm so impressed. Color me impressed.
Yeah, spitting game. I mean, let's be real here. His entire competitive career, he can go as far as to say, I took Tempo Storm to a best of 5. He might even be able to claim he has beaten Tempo Storm in a best of 5. And at this rate, he can say he's got a 100% win rate against Tempo Storm at a best of 5 if he does get this victory.
Stitches.
Amazing.
Some build change-ups. The Perfect Storm build lending us toward probably a Sledgehammer, not Skullcracker, at level 4.
Uther's mixing things up with his level 1 as well, going more auto-attack focus. It's something we've seen picked up on a map like Battlefield of Eternity. It's not surprising to see them go in that direction. It's all map focus for both of those builds.
Yeah, Hammer of the Lightbringer will be able to reduce the cooldown of Hammer of Justice later on once he finishes that quest. It's a pretty easy one to finish. That will be another way to make sure that the brew drinking of Chin has been stopped so that he can't get all the shielding from that.
One thing we do need to be drawing attention towards, though, as this game furthers heroic choices, is mainly Karazim and Abathur together. We talked about, okay, we know Double Genji is scary. We know that Chen Abathur is scary. But Karazim Abathur is another threat factor we have to be looking towards. So there are 3 heroes that all are very good in 1v1s, 2v2s, and just even trades that are not a full-out team fight. And so if Tempo somehow can get baited into those, which considering they have an Illidan composition, I think it's semi-reasonable that Lag Force might be able to find a way to pull ahead in this game through that area. But with these Immortals online, Tempo having the advantageous rotation here, they're going to be able to kick off the halftime show far before the members of Lag Force.
Yeah, Lag Force are just now rotating in, and they are all about the brawling, all the fighting. They do force Dimensional Shift, and Tassadar has left the building, but the rest are very healthy, and they'll take out Karazim as a first blood.
Thompson's the first focus. Psalm dashes over the top. Leon Black is the second focus. He ends up going down. Tempo Storm get the first 2 kills here in game number 5. Kick off the halftime show, and they are priming themselves for this first Immortal.
And here is a huge problem, because it's not just a first Immortal, it is a very well shielded first Immortal. Even with Caterpillar delaying and slowing down Big Impact and B-Kid from getting this Immortal. And that sets up Tempo Storm only better to try to get the 10 heroic spike around the same time as they get the second Immortal and win the game from it.
So Lag Force with their Abathur composition. We talked about the risk. We know the power strengths of it all, and we know that this is about the worst case here. But it's still within control. They can, if played proper, they can still stop the bleeding here. Tempo Storm's decided to go with a 2-3 laning split, which debatably, you know, could be considered advantageous. The Illidan and Tassadar together are really good siegers and pressure outward, and it's not like it's a 5-man because of all those melees we were talking about. They can't siege with that Immortal very effectively on its own. I am surprised, though, to see a 2-3 split rather than a 1-4, for instance, and Malthael will be the only one down here.
Yeah.
But it's a bit safer, I guess, and with the intent, and it's not like Uther would have provided too much to the fight either.
It seems like it's maybe more making sure that they are opening up both of the forts so that they have some possibilities of trying to continue to siege if they just have people here and there, but also making it less safe for Abathur to try to soak in the lanes during the Immortal phases. The Immortal's been dealt with. No fort goes down as a result of the 2-3, but it does take out the towers and gate in both of the lanes. And
it's not going to be full Donkey Kong build. Instead, we do see that B-Kid is going with more focus onto his flame there with his E. The Ring of Fire just gives it essentially a burning rage after using that tool, but as early as level 4.
Well, there is a big melee composition that he's up against, so trying to get a lot of damage from that also will help with wave clear. We'll see what other build or what other talents Chen goes into as the builds develop. But speaking of experience, Tempo Storm do have a level lead. They have level 7, well ahead of Lag Force. And that puts a lot on Lag Force to get level 7, and then immediately they're going to have to try to make something happen over this next Immortal phase. Yeah, and with that 7 picked up, the Skullcracker's there for Cattle, so suddenly B-Kid cannot do this and just brew blindly in front of the members of Tempo Storm. Being like, hey, you know, any cooldown on me is a good cooldown. No longer is going to be a true statement. But the biggest thing here when looking at the Chen has got to be what 7? Do we see a mix-up? Because Brewmaster's balance before this patch
would be, I mean, it has been almost the staple go-to. It's been considered objectively throughout the history of Chen the most powerful talent that has been the go-to. I mean, you get mobility, which is rare within Heroes of the Storm since we have a baseline movement speed for every single hero. And then you also have the opportunity to have higher regen whenever you aren't getting that, so you're a better 1v1.
Yeah, there is maybe a bolder flavor possibility, but I don't really see Purifying Brew making any sort of showing for the Chen games that we do get at that level because Brewmaster's balance, it's not like it was nerfed. Leon Black unfortunately goes down at the start of this Immortal phase. LagForce were doing what we expected them to do, trying to get in and stop the bleeding of this game, but
it's looking like it's it.
Yeah.
It's the worst case scenario picture we've been talking about. It's here. This last 50% of health remaining on this Immortal is all that really kind of remains for the keeps, at least here, for LagForce. Tempo ideally should wait.
This is so fast.
They don't. Ideally, you want to wait just to make sure you get that 10 spike, but if they get the 10 spike without waiting, then it's even better, and I just did my caster math wrong. I do think it will cost them, because there's no front wall, there's no free experience, that'd normally be a half level. The back turret's only going to be a smidgen here, but once the fort does fall, it will be concluded. Fort and turret, it will be a full level 10, and that's where Tempo Storm set their focus towards the keep, and honestly all in. The fact that LagForce is even
here
this far out is... I mean, it's understandable because 10s aren't here, but the Illidan composition is never one that you want to make that kind of mistake on.
All right, so this will be heroic abilities for Tempo Storm. They're not going to be there. One hook comes out. Hook is something that LagForce might be able to bank on.
Divine Storm is the choice for Uther.
Yeah, they're just going to try to end this right away. Lock down if Genji tries to go into the back line. Harass Koth and Luck.
50% shielding. They go in.
Tormented Souls sitting on 3 members. Divine Storm keeps him there as Stitches falls. Tomster dashes out, but Psalm and Fury still sticking with him to the bitter end of that Kharazim. They keep dropping rapidly. Immortal still very healthy as Tempo Storm attempts to make this a quick game 5 and make sure that they don't lose in the upset. The reverse sweep for LagForce. They are fairly low, but still they're getting kills on the members of LagForce.
And I feel like with the loss of Genji and that reset, that is going to be all she wrote. Tempo Storm is clicking the core. Psalm in the Illidan is doing what it does best. It took 5 whole games, but at the end, we find Tempo Storm still claiming victory over LagForce.
Tempo Storm with a melee death ball composition, not one that we know them to like to run, but obviously showing that their change-ups, their ability to adapt for Fury, to adapt onto Malthael now and make the necessary changes for them has worked out really well for them to run this style of composition.
And the high risk of the Abathur early on a map like Battlefield of Eternity, you and I immediately were like, you know, everything up until, and we see the Abathur pick up, and it's just like, you know, he's really good on a map like this. And again, it just comes down to if you've been struggling in the early game on a snowballing map for the early game, if you just make that one mistake, which they did around the first Immortal, it was the beginning of the end, and a slow, not so slow, struggle from that point on.
Yeah, and honestly, that plays to Tempo really well, that they were able to notice that and draft in a way that they could punish that, because Tempo themselves have run into that issue. Places like the Western Clash, they would be willing to draft Abathur on things like Dragonshire, maybe even Battlefield of Eternity there too, and they got punished for it. So all that experience that Tempo Storm has gained at international events have enabled them to figure out how they can make sure to punish that and not ever let Abathur get to his big power spikes.
That may be part of the reason when we were talking about the split pressure that they displayed over the first Immortal by pressuring up towards top is that punishment. It's opening up the map, enabling as little of area for the Abathur to kind of go out and do his thing as they can. And it's just what they managed to learn through their international play, and it gets them a win here. But I mean, let's be real here. LagForce, not only did they get the 2 wins, we talked about what that meant versus Superstars, but more importantly is like, even with that last game being as snowbally as it was, they showed up and with a sub of all things.
And got 2 game wins from Tempo Storm.
Still hard for me to believe. I mean, upsets after upsets here in phase number 2. It's only getting crazier and crazier for HGC North America.
I wonder if even in Death is looking at like that and saying, oh, we can upset Roll20. We can defeat Roll20.
I mean, you've got to feel good about it. You've had 2 cases of a underdog taking a pretty formidable team and being like, oh, that's not bad. You know, in one case they flat out won, and the other one you're just looking at and you're like, oh, that went to game. Yeah, sure, like, might as well.
Well, we've got Caterpillar on the line to talk to Tempo Storm about their win over LagForce. Hey, Cattle, congrats. How are you guys feeling about that victory over LagForce?
Feels decent. We definitely needed the win. Definitely needed the 3-0, but I mean, at least we still managed to clean it up at the end and take the series, so feels pretty good.
So we're seeing you guys draft a lot more melees, the melee comp in the last game, and then even in your series last week. Is it just a product of meta? Is this something that you guys are trying to work on being more deathball-y as a playstyle for you guys, so you can subject dominance over your opponents that way?
I think it's just a game-to-game situational thing and like map dependent too. There's no like, it's not like the good comp, but there's situations where it's useful.
All right, cool. Good.
I was just hoping you could give us a little bit of insight with the dominance you were able to display last week and then here up against Team Freedom, even playing with a sub. I feel like dropping those games had to have been not expected for you guys. So was that more of LagForce just showing up today or a bit of a kind of a, you know, speed bump for you guys?
They definitely played pretty well those 2 games when they had like slightly more even drafts. We were definitely a little sloppy and just weren't aggressive enough and just had to be like just a lot more YOLO than we were. We were playing a little too reserved, but they played pretty well. So.
All right, and on the note of kind of that reserved, is that something that, I don't know, just you guys played out of your minds last week, and so looking towards this and carrying it over, I mean, is that something you guys are intending to try and do, or is it more of just like it was last week and that's how it goes?
Just take it week by week. I don't know.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, this week, tomorrow, you guys have Superstars. Any thoughts on that matchup from you, especially now that we've seen Superstars play with Stray back in the mix?
I mean, assuming we play well, assuming we play how we did today in the games that we won, we should be able to take the series, hopefully 3-0.
Awesome. Well, congratulations again. Good luck tomorrow, and shout-outs before you go.
Yeah, thanks. Shout-outs to my team. Shout-outs to Tempo. Shout-outs to all our sponsors at Twitch, NVIDIA, Secret Lab, Mastrop, and Skytech Gaming. And yeah, shout-out to all our fans. Thanks for supporting us. Keep cheering us on, and hopefully we make it to BlizzCon in the near future.
Thank you, Cattle.
Yeah, bye.
3-2 for Tempo Storm. Did drop a couple of games to LagForce, but again, as we've talked about, that's all that LagForce was wanting. Yeah, they would have loved to win the series too, and they darn near did it. But at the end of the day, they got the 2 wins that mattered most, the 2 game wins. And
Leon Black can go home just realizing that he is merely immortal today, that he cannot come through first day, you know, just shake up the North American scene and then walk out, just be like, I've done my job.
I don't know, 2-3 over Tempo Storm with this guy, I'd feel pretty darn good. Golf claps for you, Leon Black. And that does it for our first series. We're going to go to a commercial break. After the break, Roll20 takes on Even in Death.